Longlegs is a 2024 horror movie distributed by Neon, which has been getting a lot of acclaim for its use of minimalist aesthetics, its minute but effective production design, its macabre themes, score, and great performances from Nicolas Cage and Micah Monroe. While I do think, in many regards, Longlegs is a solid movie, it has a suspenseful beginning, a middle section that continues to ask questions, and an ending that resolves the questions while adding in some unique twist to the established plot. It still leaves more to be desired. It had a really successful marketing campaign that built up hype around the movie. Guerrilla advertising tactics such as Neon releasing a 30-second teaser of a 911 call over a Polaroid photograph, not even releasing the title back in January, just worked effectively to drum up excitement for the movie. Trailers also took a great approach in not showing Nicolas Cage's face as Longlegs, which made us wonder what will he look like as the titular serial killer. Overall, Longlegs is built on a solid foundation, but solid isn't enough to be truly memorable. Today, I wanted to go into what this movie could have done to be better, and why it isn't this masterpiece that it's being described as by some reviewers. I don't want to hate on this film, there were things I enjoyed about it, but I do think, at the end of the day, when reviews are calling this a modern Silence of the Lambs, you need to take a step back and examine both films to see how one will stand the test of time, i.e. Silence of the Lambs, and how one movie, i.e. Longlegs, while probably scary and memorable in some ways, doesn't build a structure up so that it can be just as memorable. So the main issue I had with Longlegs was its meandering storyline, and there are a few major issues that did prevent me from fully enjoying this film. But I think it all links back to its story. The movie feels slow, drawn out, and it doesn't build suspense incredibly well. And I think a major reason here is how it's structured. A lot of issue also carries back to the actual plot content and what's revealed later on in the film, but we'll get to that later. Just so you know, spoilers are going to follow, so be warned. One of the worst things about this film, and to any film to me, is when a movie feels slow, like it's taking too much time to get where it has to be. And Longlegs suffers from this issue, an issue Silence of the Lambs does not have. And I'll explain what I mean by that. A lot of people might think that a lack of focusing on the titular serial killer might slow the film down. As I would think, too, you can have a movie where the center of the story is finding a killer, tracking them down, trying to learn their motive, what they're capable of, what they might look like, how they operate, all without showing the character. And a lot of excellent serial killer movies do this without showing the killer through most of the movie. They save them for the ending and provides lots of great build-up and setups right from the start to keep you interested. In the movie Seven, David Fincher's film, they do this great with Kevin Spacey's John Doe. The Batman with Paul Dano's Riddler. He doesn't appear until more than 2 hours into the movie. Silence of the Lambs features Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter, for just under 20 minutes, but the amount of screen time doesn't matter for these characters, because how they've built up is just so effective you don't need to see them to feel their presence. And because in these movies there are other things happening, such as murders that have to be solved, there's a direct link, a cause and effect. As proven in these other movies, you can build up your plot without showing your killer. A lot of these films, notably The Batman, will show the killer at a brief distance first from afar, so you get a small glimpse of him, and then the killer will sporadically appear in the film until the final showdown, if you want to call it that, in Act 3. There's a perfectly appropriate structure to take. You give audiences a glimpse of what they should fear, then you leave them waiting for more. I love this type of suspense building in a movie. It's just with a movie like Longlegs, you don't really have a lot to latch on to. The movie has this weird structure where the main characters are researching murders that took place decades ago in the 70s, so it's definitely cryptic and mysterious, but there's no active stakes, nothing actively drawing us to be worried for the characters' sakes, or to feel scared for them. There's no dual plots that collide or intertwine, which would leave you feeling so much more tension. For example, in Silence of the Lambs, there are two plot lines. The main plot focuses on FBI agent Clarice Starling trying to interview the brilliant but psychopathic imprisoned serial killer Hannibal Lecter to learn the motives of a serial killer who's currently on the loose named Buffalo Bill. And the second plotline involves Buffalo Bill, who is abducting women, holding them in his basement, and planning to murder them, which sets a ticking clock, so the FBI agent will find her in time. The issue with Longlegs is the agent doesn't really have anything to be looking for. There's no one currently kidnapped. There's no one who she needs to rescue. There's no one in danger. It's just a slow-paced film where she's trying to find clues, but no one's in danger, so it doesn't feel like there's any threat. The horror of it doesn't really work because there's nothing to be scared of. The issue with Longlegs is its staggered time frame. Most of the murders that are being investigated in this film have taken place years ago, so the draw comes from how did Longlegs commit the murders, since the police in the film say there's no evidence of a break-in at any of the crime scenes, which would indicate that the killer committed the murders without even entering the house. It's a great concept, sure, but it runs dry quick, especially when we want to feel like someone's in danger, where there's tension and rising stakes in every advancing scene. It's almost like we're told this is creepy and we should be scared, but we don't actually feel that, which is just totally different. Show, don't tell. Silence of the Lambs cuts between the serial killer taunting his victim and the FBI agent working frantically to find her, while Lecter, the other serial killer, plots an escape on his own. That's 3 viewpoints we get to see, and it's fascinating to see how they work against each other. In Longlegs, most of the movie is focused through the lens of Micah Monroe's character, Agent Lee Harker. But the issue is, as a lead, she doesn't function too well because it's not really her film. It's really no one's film. She doesn't really get backstory that we can relate to or sympathize with her, and even if it informs the plot, it isn't until the film's ending that we certainly understand this. It's a great movie to see twice and look for all the clues you might have missed, to see how Micah Monroe's Lee Harker ties into Longlegs' serial killings. But the actual plot is so convoluted, a very boring explanation just kills it. And in my opinion, it's this choice to tie up the story in an intertwined backstory with Micah Monroe's Lee Harker and Nicolas Cage's Longlegs that messies the story. And it isn't one of those they are related twist, he's her father, etc., which even then, done well, could have been effective. It's just how it ties up a story of a serial killer that leaves a little more to be desired. And for that, we're going to have to get into spoiler territory, which you've been warned about. We learn near the end of the movie that Lee's mother, who's mostly just been present on ominous phone calls, has actually been the one committing the murders. But she hasn't actually been committing them. Turns out, as revealed in a third act flashback, Longlegs showed up at Lee Harker's house when she was a kid and tried to kill her. But Lee's mom stopped this. However, she made a deal with the devil to do it. Longlegs offered her a choice. She could let her daughter die or help him commit murders. And this is where it gets confusing and oddly frustrating. So it turns out Longlegs was never actually committing murders either. He was just some ugly fucking guy who happens to make dolls for no explanation that the devil can possess. And then the devil himself commits the murders. So Longlegs isn't even a serial killer. He's a doll maker who somehow has this gift to allow the devil to enter a doll, which is never really explained. And after crafting these dolls made by the devil, apparently, or devils inside them, he gives the dolls to this woman, the mother of Lee Harker, who gives them to a family, and then the devil takes over the doll and murders the family. It sounds like creepy in concept, like, oh, the devil's actually in a little doll which kills people. Like, that's like, ooh, that could be creepy. But it's just a lot of explanation, and based on stuff we never even see. We never see the devil come out and commit these murders. We never see why Longlegs believes in these dolls, or why he's making them in the first place. Why is he worshiping Satan? Why does he enjoy committing these murders? What's the payoff for Longlegs? That's the question that bothers me the most. It's a movie about the serial killer, yet we don't even know what's fueling him to do this in the end. It just makes no sense. I think you can have this interesting concept and the idea that Satan's actually the one pulling the strings and using this doll as a tool to do that. And even more fascinating, you can have Longlegs as the one doing the crimes for him, being the face, the distraction for the main audience. It's a lot to pull off, and it really does seem like something that can be done well, and has been done well in other related contexts like Rosemary's Baby. But the issue here is Longlegs is just not that great at linking these main narrative components together, with the demonic possession trope and the idea of a serial killer who isn't actually a serial killer but a disciple of the devil doing his bidding. It simply does not translate that well because we've been so vague with Nicolas Cage's Longlegs to begin with to give him this eerie mystery, the sense of wonder of who he is, why he's doing this. It just doesn't work when we want to know why he would be this supposed serial killer being a follower of Satan. What's driving him to do this? We can know he's evil, sure, he says Hail Satan, but is that enough? Does it drive home this cause so we can understand why he's doing all this? The best villains have complex, sometimes even relatable motives for why they have to do what they do. You can still have a character like the Joker who never seems to have a motive, which is all the more fascinating even though the Joker's one motive seems to be chaos, perfect for a villain. But Longlegs is never given a clear motive and it affects his character and the story. I went into this thinking it would introduce one of the greatest villains ever put on screen, but I ended up really just feeling like Nicolas Cage was doing another more high-end version of the direct-to-DVD stuff he usually does. Yeah, he's barely in this, and he's very much still doing his typical Nicolas Cage craziness when he's on screen. But you could have a villain who's barely on screen but still leaves an impact, like Hannibal Lecter. He's in the movie for 20 minutes, but won an Oscar and is one of the greatest villains ever made, or put to the screen. Longlegs is on screen for a similar amount of time, but I really am going to forget about him and already have. It really isn't great, but it's not terrible. It's just very down the line okay, which is a disappointment considering the marketing for this movie was so good. So let me know what you guys thought of Longlegs if you were bored, if you thought it was kind of slow, what the consensus was. I don't think I'm the only one who thought that. But let me know what you guys think about Longlegs and if you are excited for Osgood Perkins' new movie, The